Hello, internet friends! I moved! This is my new room, and the new home of my massive, weird, vintage video game and toy collection. This is also where I'm going to be making videos, and also where I work my day job from home. It is both my favorite and my least favorite room to be in. It looks pretty nice right now behind me, but trust me, it did not look that way when we first moved in. So let me take you on a little journey of how we gave it a makeover. For a really long time, and a lot of you probably remember this, I had this IKEA bookcase that looked really nice when it was all assembled, but had a lot of structural problems. It was really only held together at the back with little tiny brackets, and then we mounted it to the wall in several places to keep it from falling apart from sheer force of gravity. There were also a few other problems with it, like each cube was basically its own little cave that blocked all light. So displaying stuff on it in a way that looked pleasing was really difficult. I got it all arranged exactly how I wanted right before we moved out of our last place, and I knew it wouldn't survive being set up like that again. After 7 years and many moves, that thing was at the end of its life. It was time to say goodbye. So when it came to replacing it, I decided I wanted to try and do something that I've always wanted to do, and that is to get a bespoke shelf unit installed with built-in lighting and custom features just for me and my collections. Something that would make this room not just functional, but like a really cozy place to sit and record game footage, and then also work my 9 to 5. At first, I was like, we could totally DIY this, but neither me or my husband Chaz have any woodworking skills or experience. So ultimately, I was like, okay, I'm going to set aside $5,000. Maybe it would be cheaper and easier to just pay someone else to do this. I happen to live in a pretty big city, so I have a lot of options for companies to work with. It was honestly a little overwhelming researching this. So I was just like, okay, let me reach out to 3 companies. I'll tell them what I want, and I will go with the cheapest of those 3 options that gives me everything that I need. I had a few things in mind for the shelf unit to replace my IKEA cubes. First, as I already mentioned, I wanted built-in lighting to display all of my treasures. Second, I wanted printer drawers on the bottom, so I could keep my retro consoles in there and just pull out a drawer when I wanted to use one, instead of hauling the whole thing out and all of its wires and controllers every time and having to set it up from scratch. Third, I wanted a space for a TV, obviously, to play and record at. I'm getting old, so sitting at a desk to play and record all of my game footage is killing my back and neck. My ideal was to have a couch in here, to sit in and relax while I got my game footage instead, which meant I needed a really long HDMI cable to run from the back of that TV to the bottom of my desk here. And finally, I needed a decent amount of storage, because I don't display every single game or toy that I own all at once. Each company that I talked to had a designer come out to my room. They all took measurements of the room and then asked me questions about what I wanted and what types of things I wanted to display. It was very surreal to talk to these professionals about all of my dolls and video games and have them take it very seriously. The first company that came out actually brought a laptop with them to work out some preliminary designs during the quoting and consultation process. The other 2 just said that they'd get back to me via email later. I had read during the researching phase that generally local smaller companies will have better prices than the big national ones, but that ended up not being the case at all with these estimates. The first company that I talked to was California Closets, and they ended up having the cheapest estimate by far, and that included all of the bells and whistles that I wanted. They were also able to offer me a promotional discount for locking in the rate early, which I think really helped. The second and third companies that I talked to that were local to Portland were asking for a couple $1,000s more for basically the same thing, and theirs weren't even as cute. This video is not sponsored, by the way. I paid for this whole thing out of pocket and they wouldn't even let me film the installation. I just thought I would mention which company I ended up using in case somebody watching this wants to follow this example and do something similar. Of all the designers that came out to give me quotes, theirs was also the most excited about the project, which was nice too. The install date was a few months out to give them time to build the pieces to assemble, so I needed to get the room situated before they would be here to put the shelf in. When we first moved in, this room had gray walls and ugly old tit lighting on the ceiling, and what was left of my IKEA cube shelf was in sad little stacks against the wall. I had to temporarily throw all of my stuff in plastic bins in the closet. This room also had these big blinds which, while not really ugly, were not energy efficient and kind of in my way. And the last thing that I needed to change was that there was this really ugly old oxidized Ethernet port in the wall that was extremely yellow from age. The first step of the makeover was to get everything out of the room so we could paint it. You will be seeing my husband Chaz a lot in these clips, so everybody say hi to Chaz. We got rid of the gray and painted it bright white with one blue accent wall. I actually kept the paint from 2 apartments ago, so it's the exact same color as the wall in my old videos. Now to clarify, there's really nothing wrong with gray walls. I just don't like having walls that are gray because somebody else chose them to be gray. I also live in the Pacific Northwest, so here the sky is always gray. If you live in an apartment and you look out of the window, the parking lot is gray, and then the inside is gray. So listen up, here's the story about a little me that lives in a gray world, and all day and all night and everything I see is just gray like me, inside and outside. Anyway, painting is tedious, but we painted it. Then we recaulked the edge of the window because the old caulk was cracking. And we put in an energy-efficient cell shade that would take up less space than the blinds. We swapped the ugly old tit light on the ceiling for an LED puck light. It's extremely basic, but it gets the job done. I also replaced that oxidizing old Ethernet port on the wall with some equivalent. Don't tell anyone, but I just shoved all that shit inside the wall and didn't hook it up. Not using that port anyway. Finally, on the day of the install, the technicians arrived at 8 a.m. and stayed until 4 p.m. I did email asking permission to film the installation, but they never got back to me. So all I got was this little in progress clip from when they were on their lunch break. It was a very long day, but when they got done, I was floored by how cool it looked. The guy who installed the unit told me the HDMI cable I got was just barely long enough, so if I needed to change it out in the future, I could just tape a new cord to the old cord and pull it through the grommets they set up. At this point, all I needed to do was mount my foam sound panels, put everything back on and in the shelves, clean and cable manage my desk, and then, for now, the room was done. By the way, if you're wondering what these console stands I'm using are, the handheld ones are from Rose Colored Gaming, and the rest were 3D printed for me by Chaz. If I can find the Thingiverse pages for what I used, I'll link them in the description. Most of these Sega Saturn games are fake. It's just such an expensive system to collect for that I decided it made more sense just to get the aesthetic of the cases without actually spending the money. I made the cases by printing out the artwork from Sega Retro and cutting it to fit empty jewel cases. Only some of these are real. Can you guess which ones? Everyone asks me about this GameCube. It's a custom paint job from Controller Maestro on Etsy. It seems like they don't do these anymore when I looked them up for this video, so that's a shame. PlayStation is a reshell. They did not make translucent PlayStations as far as I know. Aftermarket shells are really expensive for some reason. There must not be a big scene for custom PS1s. I love it in here. The warm light from the shelves is so cozy. Somehow, even though the shelf is taking up like 10% of the room, it's so grand the room actually feels bigger with it in here. As you can see, the printer drawers hold my consoles more or less perfectly, although none of them are actually set up yet. There are grommets on the insides of the drawers, so all of them can seamlessly have cords that go up to the TV. All of my dolls, Pokemon cards, games, and toys fit perfectly, and I freed up enough space in my closet to get rid of one whole set of those plastic bins. Eventually, I will tackle organizing that closet, but it's not urgent. There's more I'd like to do in here in the future. I'd like to replace my L-shaped desk with a longer, straight one. I absolutely need to get some comfy seating in here. I want to put some UV blocking film over the windows to protect my precious from sun damage. And I want to try to paint a mural on the last blank wall that's in here. I've never done anything like that before, but if I hate it, or if it turns out bad, I can just paint over it, so why not? But since this unit was so expensive, I will need to wait a while to save up before I can keep going. But yeah, this is my room. Some of you were asking for a before and after on social media, or an explanation of how I got my new shelf, so there you go. I hope your curiosity is sated. Maybe I'll make updates on other little projects I do in here in the future. Let me know if you want to see that. I actually wrote 2 other videos in the time I was waiting for my shelf to be installed, so now that my office is functional, I can actually make them. So stay tuned for a couple of vids gushing about some games I love. Today's show and tell, when I ask you all to hit that bell icon and subscribe for more videos, is this Hello Kitty Dreamcast. You might have noticed I have a bit of a thing for translucent consoles. See ya!